All right. Hello, David. Hello, Rusty. Hello, participants. Looks like I'm experiencing a little bit of camera issues, so I'm just going to leave that off for a moment, see if I can fix that here in a second. But definitely wanted to welcome everybody in. As I said, we are joined by Rusty and David today. Rusty is SVP of Revenue at Conga. David, Salesforce Enablement Leader at Brain8. Welcome in, guys. Good afternoon. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Great.
Very well.
Thank you for having us. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I don't think I'm doing as good as David, though, Gina. I don't know if that's possible.
I definitely want a little bit of his energy. That's for sure.
It's awesome.
The question is, what's in the drink? I'm kidding.
Right? I wanted to take a moment and thank everybody for joining us on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon to learn how to level up your career with Salesforce and Conga admin expertise. Super excited to have everybody join us this afternoon, and excited to go ahead and get started. So, David, let's start with you. Share us your real life experience in the Salesforce world and how you elevated your career.
Sure thing. So I, on paper, I'm actually an attorney. I was a philosophy major and I went to law school to become an attorney. And I actually am admitted to practice law in a couple of different jurisdictions. No, I was not disbarred. So I'm not practicing law out of my own choice, not because I was thrown out of the profession. But long story short, I landed in the Salesforce world when I was working at GE. I was at GE Capital. I was in the IT team, and then I was in the marketing team responsible for their CRM, which at the time was Siebel. And Salesforce landed on my lap. I had no clue what it was. If it was one word or two, I had no idea why on earth we were moving off of Siebel onto Salesforce. But as soon as I started learning Salesforce, I completely fell in love with it. And I fell in love with it for a lot of different reasons, both from the end user perspective, where you can customize. And by the way, this was way before Lightning. This was back in 2007, 2008, when it was just Classic, and the ways in which Salesforce can be customized for the end user to only show the fields and to only have certain things editable and to only show page layouts that were, or the records that were appropriate for the user, to me was just completely mind-blowing, and how incredibly easy it was on the back end to configure all of it. So both from the IT, from the technology perspective, as well as the end user perspective, I totally fell in love with Salesforce. So after I left GE, I actually started my own Salesforce consulting business, which is Brain8. So at Brain8, basically, we help other companies that are using Salesforce to get the most out of Salesforce in ways that really make sense for them to solve problems, the productivity and efficiency problems that they have within their organization on the Salesforce platform. So that's essentially what I do and how I came into the Salesforce world, and that's the driving force behind everything that I do, solving problems for people and for organizations on the Salesforce platform.
That's awesome. And it makes such a big difference. I mean, it's funny how you share your first experiences with Salesforce. Personally, I started engaging with Salesforce about 15 years ago as well. And I did it in a capacity as a sales developer, right? Doing, ground level work. And I was one of those people that really dived into it, got really excited about the operations and kind of saw the power. And I didn't know the power behind it until I actually had a side business that I had on the side where I actually built my own instance of Salesforce just to kind of run my little business. It was nothing like, none of that, but it's amazing like what you can do and the impact you can make on a company from an operations perspective, knowing and understanding the inside and out aspects of Salesforce and be able to make a difference for organizations.
I couldn't agree more. And I think exactly the point that you just called out is really the missing link that we're focusing on in this webinar. And I think that so many Salesforce professionals today, unfortunately, are not aware enough of or don't make it their priority throughout everything that they do, which is identifying what are the problems, what are the inefficiencies, what are the obstacles that the business users are experiencing, and how can they be solved. And it is, if you're using Salesforce, it's usually on the Salesforce platform because that's the centralized database. Usually, that's the centralized database of the organization. Sometimes the solution really has nothing to do with Salesforce. It has to do with clean up your damn data before you put it into Salesforce. Sometimes it's with the underlying process, which again has nothing to do with Salesforce. So in the end, so many people get all caught up in learning about the new features. How do I create the new flow? How do I edit a flow? How do I create a custom object? Oh, I know how to create a custom page layout. It's not about creating a custom page layout. Nobody gives a damn about your page layouts. What people care about are how you're going to solve a problem for them. And if the creation of a flow or a validation rule or a page layout or a custom button will solve the problem, then you are golden, and you are one of the most respected and cared about professionals, employees, team members within the organization. And that's what lets you really stand out within the organization.
Yeah, and that's where you got to be. And I think that, especially when you start getting into a lot of depth in your expertise and being able to build out these great custom page layouts and all these different processes and things, that one process that ties to another that solves another problem. Sometimes it's easy to forget who your customers are and who you're building these for. So in a lot of cases, people don't have the same passion and excitement about what's being constructed or built, and maybe they don't have the same kind of aptitude, right? Because you have to kind of build it for the lowest common denominator, and you have to go down and be like, okay, who are the people we're building this for? Because I come from, like a sales background as an example. And if you're building anything that's any more than 4 fields for people to fill out, you're going to start getting data integrity problems. Mm-hmm. And when you can actually take, okay, this is a problem we're trying to solve, and then be able to build something that's really cool, that's amazing, that can do a lot of automation, but then the inputs fit the business users well. So you meet your business users where they are, construct something that's easy to interact with, and then be able to get them to solve the problems and get them to the data and get them to the automation they want to get to. And it's funny how you say, David, that's something that will impact your perception from other people, and it'll impact like how they view you and how they view your value. It's really that ability to build out a lot of that automation and to solve big business problems, but to do it in a way that makes sense for everybody, that generates adoption, that gets people to do it. Right?
Exactly. And I think I'll rewind for a moment. If I were to meet 2 different people who are pursuing a new career as a Salesforce admin, I typically see one of 2 different paths that they take. Or I shouldn't even say Salesforce admin, Salesforce professional. Because honestly, it does not matter if you're the CRM leader, if you're a Salesforce admin, the word Salesforce, neither the word Salesforce nor admin is even in your job title. So it could be project manager, BA, whatever it is. You're responsible for the Salesforce platform within your organization. And I often see one of 2 paths that are taken. One, which is exactly what we're talking about, which is the person who looks to identify what are the business problems that exist within the organization, or even when someone approaches that individual and says, hey, can you do XYZ in Salesforce? Can you do blah, blah, blah? Create a new button, create a new checkbox, whatever it is in Salesforce. They will sort of flip back and recycle that question or that request into a question which is really getting to the heart of asking why do you need it? What they're really asking for is, what is the business problem that we're looking to solve with this request that is coming in? And by doing that, they're on the path that we're talking about, and they will build their personal brand and their reputation, and they'll have career success. They'll be seen not as the Salesforce person, as the person who solves problems within the organization. The alter ego of that person, so the other option, the other way that sadly, too many Salesforce professionals pursue their career path, is simply chasing the badges and the certifications, and they want to show off to the business how they know how to build that new flow and a custom screen and a new lightning component and a new integration. Yet at the same time, to your point, Rusty, these people in the business, they don't necessarily know what the heck the difference is between a record or a record type or a field or a page layout. They don't know, nor do they care. They don't care about the shiny whiz-bang things that you did. And that's really what sets people apart in totally different paths, because in the end, the one who's focused on the technology as the center of everything that they do, those are the people who they're positioning themselves as a commodity within the organization. a commodity that can be easily replaced by anyone else who knows how to do those things. Whereas the person who positions themselves as the problem solver, the person who keeps asking why, the person who looks for the manual, clunky business processes that are going on within the organization and looks to identify solutions and recommendations in order to solve them, that person is seen as, it might be a stretch for some of you to hear this, but an assistant to the COO. Basically, they are a person who is looking at operations to streamline operations for the entire organization, to streamline data quality, to streamline the resources, to streamline the customer support that's happening, the sales processes that are happening, the marketing initiatives that are happening for the organization. So you choose your path. My recommendation is choose the first path to position yourself as a problem solver, because if you choose the second, you're going to be replaced by the next person who has the same skills and is only asking for less money as a compensation.
Right. And it's an interesting balance. And I'd love to maybe give some, executive perspective on this, right from the business side, because this is really, really, really powerful in terms of being able to progress your career and get where you want to go. What David just said is very powerful, because if I go to people and I have a conversation from an operations person, and I think that every executive on the business side should have some data competency. And I think that any operations person should have some business competency, right? So that you can communicate and collaborate. But if an executive comes and says, hey, set up this field for me, do this thing for me, set up this report for me, and people just keep doing that work, what ends up happening is you just keep solving problems, and it builds this nest, right? It's like this hairball that gets created that actually slows other things down. Whereas if you can get with somebody and you can speak the language of business and understand, okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish from a business perspective, and then be able to have that conversation, identify what's needed to be done, and then you can create a solution that fits well with all your other processes and get it done quickly and show the business impact and the outcome. When you can do that effectively, like I got to tell you, it's like use the term commodity. Like as an executive, you find somebody, it's like, hey, I've got somebody. Somebody says, hey, I've got a big problem. I got somebody, David Giller. Let me tell you about David. People get really excited that they have somebody that has that level of competency. And when you talk about somebody being the right hand of a COO, the right hand of a CFO, sales leader, absolutely, you can be elevated by these business users and these business executives when you have that competency and you can speak the language and you can solve the business problems and you can focus up the stack. I mean, one more point on that is this, which is it's easy when you're interested in things and you're interested in process and you're interested in building new cool layouts and formulas and other things. It's easy to get focused on that capability, right? And to explain what you're trying to do in that term. Like it's easy to do. Now, other business users that are at like the user level might be able to understand that and be excited about it. But the further you go up in the stack, when you're working with directors, VPs, and executives, the more they care about data and business outcome. The how is not very important in an executive perspective. It's the what. Like, what are we accomplishing and why? It's not how are we doing it. They just want to make sure it gets done effectively, efficiently. You understand the request and you deliver it, and you can show the results on the back end. And when you can do that, it's just, I can't tell you, like you talk about commodity, it is so valuable to us. And people will come at you with wheelbarrows full of money, right? In different roles and different situations to try to bring you along with them as they move in their career. It's really important.
Rusty, that is so true. And I just want to give one real world example of how I implement this, how I make this situation real, the situation that we're talking about, how I make it real within organizations at the point when working on a Salesforce project that is probably the most painful for the person managing a Salesforce rollout implementation. And that point is, believe it or not, when it comes time to bringing the sales leaders into a room and to train them on this new platform called Salesforce. Because I can't tell you how many times I am at the front of the room and I am watching these people coming in arms folded. I can see the fumes coming out of their ears. They don't want to be there. They want to be talking to customers and prospects. They want to be closing deals. They do not want to be in this room, whether it's in person or virtual. They don't want to be in this room learning how to use Salesforce. They think that their Excel spreadsheets are good enough, or whatever other legacy system they were using was good enough. And they see that this is Big Brother and this is annoying and this is frustrating, etc. I can tell by the facial expressions they want to throw a chair at my head, and I couldn't care less. I'm standing there smiling, waiting for them to sit down and get settled. And basically the first thing that I do, I show them the homepage and I explain to them that before we dive in, first I need to explain the navigation of Salesforce. And the first thing that I teach them is the search box, how to use the search feature in Salesforce. And a person might think, why the heck are you even wasting their time teaching them how to use search? It's freaking intuitive. It's like, hello, it's a search box. You don't have to show anything. And I start by doing this. I say, look at my home screen. Let's make believe today is your first day on the job. You have absolutely no clue how to use Salesforce, nor do you know any of the customers, prospects, or deals that are going on within the organization. You don't even know where the bathroom is. But you have Salesforce, you're logged in, forget all of the colors and of charts and reports and whatever else is going on the homepage. You pick up the phone rings, you pick up the phone, person says, hi, my name is blah, 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 George Jetson, whatever their name is. And you start typing their name in the search box. And as you start typing, I point out, look at this. Just like on Google, Salesforce is immediately saying, oh, wait a minute, maybe this is what you're looking for. Is this what you're looking for? As you're typing, it's narrowing down the options. And whether it is, in fact, one of those options that the Salesforce search is suggesting or not, you can hit enter and it'll do a full-blown search. But within 3 seconds, you've landed on that record page for that person. And now as a complete stranger, first day on the job, it's your first 5 minutes in the brand new office, you're able to have an intelligent conversation with that person who is a total stranger to you about whether it's their open customer support tickets, their open deals. You can identify who their primary contact is, who their account executive is, who's the account owner, the contact owner, whatever it might be, in order to have that intelligent conversation and serve those people. Now, when I am doing that, again, with the facial expressions and the tension that I'm getting from everyone else in the room, as I'm teaching them how to just use the search, I see the there's a transformation that happens on all of the facial expressions. And these people are like, oh my God, this is so freaking cool. I've just changed the entire tone for the whole room. And now they are ready for me to show them anything else that I'm about to show them. Because in the end, it's not, going back to your point, Rusty, it's not about the feature. This is a search feature and it's going to search through all the following objects. You don't need to talk about that. Show them in the real world how it's going to impact them and make their lives easier, how it's going to make the interactions that they have with customers and prospects more intelligent and more meaningful and more efficient at the same time. And that's what gets everyone to do the happy dance.
I love it. Yeah, and then you're meeting them where they are. It's great.
Exactly.
It's great.
Absolutely. I think this is a great point to kind of expand on. So David, where do you think inside of a business or within Salesforce, can an admin make a big business impact?
So there are many different areas where, and also depending on the industry, they're in, depending on the type of organization, what the organization does, there are so many different opportunities to find ways to streamline and simplify operations. But one that I absolutely love, which is also one of the reasons why I love partnering up with Conga, is Conga Composer when it comes to document creation. So whether it's a nonprofit or a company in financial services, a company that's in communications or healthcare or education, I can keep going on and on. Practically every organization has some type of a consent form, a release form, an NDA, a proposal, a contract, an invoice, some type of document. So sometimes it's not even a document about making the transaction move forward. Sometimes it's simply a document like a one-pager overview of the products or services that you provide. So it's your internal products or services that you want to turn into a dynamic document to merge in information, or before we even get to the concept of merge, to take information that already resides in Salesforce, and you have a template that exists. Now, when we say template, a lot of times before you even explore this process. It's not even technically a template. What a lot of times what a sales rep does is they'll go to their inbox or their sent items to find the most recent NDA or proposal or product review sheet that they sent to someone else. They'll take that one and they'll modify it and customize it, and then they'll save it again. And then the question is, where did they save it? Did they put in the company name appropriately? Did they put in the contacts job title appropriately? Did they put in any typos? And we all know what kind of formatting disasters happen when you cut and paste from anything into Word or from Word into anything else, that all the formatting gets out of whack. So there's a lot of clunky, time-consuming steps that happen for generating any of these documents. And this is where just even introducing the concept of could you imagine how streamlined and how efficient your business operations would be if you just click a button within the Salesforce screen, on the account screen, on the contact screen, on the opportunity screen, whatever screen it might, whatever record is necessary for initiating this document getting created. And the templates that your company created with your own corporate terminology, with your own corporate branding, colors, fonts, product images, etc., they're already sitting within that document, and it's simply merging in the information that exists already in Salesforce, and at the same time not only turning it into a Microsoft Word document or a PowerPoint or an Excel spreadsheet, but also on the fly converting it into a PDF, and on the fly attaching it to an email that's going to get sent out and to streamline and simplify all of that to make it one click, or even more so to make that whole process get triggered based on updating the lead status or opportunity stage or any other field that you have in Salesforce. To me, this is an area where practically any Salesforce professional, and again, you don't have to have the word Salesforce or admin in your job title, anyone who is responsible for Salesforce at your organization can identify, as you can see from this slide, regardless of what type of functional business units are currently within your organization are currently using Salesforce. I can guarantee that all of you watching this, you just look at some of the bullet points that we have on this slide, and you're going to see some types of documents that will resonate with you within your organization. You're going to find areas where time-consuming, clunky, error-prone processes exist within your organization. And by you even proactively starting the conversation with your colleagues by saying, hey, by the way, for you to put together that NDA, how many of those do you do a week? And how much time does it typically take? And to also offer up to them, what if you click a button and it automatically gets generated? You're going to see these people do the happy dance, and that's going to start a domino effect, this whole snowball, where they're going to start to realize, oh, wait, we've got all of these other documents that you didn't even know about that could be streamlined and automated as well. So to me, this is, I genuinely get very excited on this topic, because to me, it's all about what I talked about before, solving the problems. And a lot of times these are problems that are not even being proactively articulated by the people in sales, by the business leaders, because they just assume that the painful, clunky, manual, time-consuming ways that they're doing it today, that's how it's supposed to be. And no, it's not supposed to be that way.
It's not. I mean, and it causes a lot of really painful problems. And one of the things I've found is very interesting, as I've kind of gone throughout my career, just worked with a lot of people. Even when you come up with a good solution, like, hey, you can generate a proposal or a quote with a click of a button, sometimes people are just like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't know if I want to do that. I like the control I have. I like the way I'm doing it, right? And I'm just going to keep doing it the way that I'm doing it. And, you know, a lot of the process of trying to make a change and make an impact is just helping to get people to adopt the new process and the new way of doing things, and to be able to do it in a way that's really appealing to teams. You know, as I've looked at like different deployments, different situations in Salesforce, I'll give you kind of an interesting example. I have seen companies and organizations go to incredible expense to be able to create tools that, for example, will configure price quotes. So like a CPQ engine. So put together the right components, products, the right pricing, kind of guide them through that process. And then when it comes to the actual generation of a document, a lot of times you get to the end of the configuration process and the salesperson will just copy it off the screen and put it back into their template the way they want it to. And that template looks different. Like you've got this template that's like Windows 95, somebody's sharing templates around, people are throwing them around all over the place. Some of the things are accurate. Some of the product descriptions are accurate. Some are not. Some of the
and different colleagues are using different versions of the template.
All over the place. Everything's all over the place. And, and when you go to solve that problem, like inherently we know that's a problem. Okay. We shouldn't do that. We should have a singular, common, simple document that can be very created very quickly. And what happens, and the reason why people do it is having to go through a difficult process. If you over-engineer the solution to be able to create the right document, people will go around the process. And when you have a lot of people going around the process and doing it their own way, it's an indication that we're not meeting the teams where they need to be. But the problems it causes are big. And sometimes it's hard to articulate this. Let me give you an example of how this might go. David might come in. You saw the excitement from David, right? He's excited about why this is making such an impact with documents. You might come in and say, salespeople are using the wrong templates and the wrong quotes, and they're using all their different versions, and this is happening. And we need them to use a common version, and we need to invest in an automation process, and we need to build out a process to where we can make it simple for them to create a quote at the click of a button. Now, everybody can understand that as a concept, but as an executive, if I don't see the bigger picture as to why, I'll just sit back and listen, like, yeah, sounds good, but are they creating quotes today? Yeah. Are they able to sell? Yeah. So you're selling me on the concept that we're going to save salespeople 2 extra hours of time. Well, they're just lazy. Just have them go do it, right? Just have them fill it out. Just make them use it. Why don't you just send them all a common template to use? Sometimes we don't always understand. But then when you flip it and you say, well, let's talk about the real problem we're trying to solve. So we're trying to make this easy, but let's unpack this for a minute. What is the customer impact like? What does this do to a customer? Like, think of it in terms of our own context. If you buy something that's expensive, so let's say you buy a car, right? You buy something that's expensive, and half of the things you thought you were getting aren't on the contract. You sign it anyway, you're expecting to receive it, and the company comes back to you and says, actually, you know what? Those leather seats, we can't deliver it. Actually, that component you thought you bought that you got in your PO, we can't actually deliver that. Now you have to come back and get an addendum because it wasn't included and it costs this much more money. How often does that happen? It happens all the time. I mean, David, how many times have you gotten a situation where you went to go acquire software, do something new, and then somebody comes back and says, oh, this is missing, that's missing, they have to make an addendum.
You want that feature? It's another add-on.
It's another add-on. It's more. Think about the customers. First of all, I hate when that happens to me. Everybody hates when it happens, but let me talk about the cost. The cost of that is extreme. Because if you've already gone through the process of doing a PO and setting up a new software and getting a whole new system or getting a whole new thing, and then now you need a new feature, you're going to say, okay, wait a minute. That wasn't told to me. That wasn't included. Either you give it to me for free or you're going to have to sell it at an extreme discount. That's what we call revenue leakage. Most organizations we talk to, you're talking 3 to 5% of revenue is leaked because of inaccurate documentation. And that happens because people are passing templates around, things are going on. That's just one use case, right? Think about 3 to 5% of $50 million in sales. Now we're talking about some really significant losses that companies are experiencing. Now, when you put that in that framework, when David comes and says, Rusty, you're losing about $2.5 million a year because we have people that are not trained sending out the wrong kinds of documents, making mistakes, manually inputting data. Even when they're good, they're making these mistakes, and these are the losses we're seeing. You make these adjustments, we think you can make a $2 million change in your bottom line. That's a huge difference, let alone the customer impact and and that's really what we're looking for, is to say, oh my gosh, like it's not that you want to put in an automation feature to make everybody's job easier. This is saving labor, but this is saving real revenue, right? And when you can articulate that this is the problem we're trying to solve, and then you say, this is how we're going to solve it. So we're going to install Conga Composer. It's going to automate the configuration of these quotes and templates. We'll maintain them. We'll make them simple. We'll put a button right inside of Salesforce. They click it. There's the document done. Easy. And the same goes with other use cases. That's how we get there, right? Is to tell them what the problem is, right? And how we're going to solve it.
I agree 100%. Yes. And I have to tell you that a lot of times, if let's say I'm having that conversation with the business leader and like, I can just tell from their facial expression that they're just not getting it. They think that I'm simply the techno geek who's saying, oh, here's another shiny thing that can help you. And they're like, no, we're fine doing it the manual, time consuming way. Joe and Susan in the corner there, they do it. They never complain. I turn to them and I say, imagine for a minute what the experience is like for your customer. Imagine for a minute what the experience is like for you as a customer, for any type of product or service that you are exploring. Gutter cleaning, home decorating. You book an airline ticket online, and it simply takes 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 3 days for you to get, whether it's the NDA, the proposal, the contract, or even a confirmation of what you just purchased, or you actually get it and the font of the name is off from the rest of the document. Like, what? You're gonna be unimpressed very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And the longer it takes for you to get those documents to move the deal forward as the customer, the more likely you are to find an alternate solution, because
right,
you're in the mode now of finding the gutter cleaning service. So
yeah,
like,
right.
hello.
I mean, if you can't get me a quote, then how are you going to actually deliver on the service? If you can't, like it's really, you lose revenue on that side. It's amazing how many places you lose, where you lose.
Yeah.
Now, another thing on the business case, maybe we can talk about, David, on this one, is kind of the second area. So if we say, okay, and you go into a business leader, you say, here's the real problem we're trying to solve, and here's how we want to solve it. That frames it totally differently. Then the second thing we want to know is, okay, I understand the problem as a business leader. Well, what's it going to take to do this? And sometimes we think about it in terms of like money. Oh, it's only 20K or it's only 70K, right? But it's more than that, because business leaders think very similarly to operations and IT teams. Right. Whereas you have a whole list of things you could do. We all have a lot of ideas, but we have to prioritize it. We have to prioritize this as to how long is it going to take and what resources are required, right? And what is the impact going to be? And the less time it takes and the higher impact it is, that's what gets prioritized. And so when you go and present a solution and you say, here's the problem we're trying to solve for, and here's how we're going to do it, you also have to then be able to say, and I can do it this quickly, and it'll make this much impact. When you can clearly articulate what the investment is in money, time, resources, stakeholder change, because remember, it's a lot of work to change everybody's behavior, right?
Exactly.
Now, teaching a sales organization how to click a button, got it, okay? If they have to go through and fill out a 25-page form, right, with and draw blood and whatever, whatever they have to do to get to the end, but clicking a button, that sounds pretty easy. What did the sales organization say? But yeah, they really want this. Okay, that's simple. What does the investment take? Well, it's with Composer. We just use Word and we're integrating it here, and it's going to take us 2 weeks. Okay, what kind of impact? $2.5 million. Okay, now we're getting our deal prioritized. But not only getting prioritized, you're solving a big problem. And I'm just like, wait, we're going to do what? We're going to save how much? And you can do it how quickly? All right. Like, you have to also be able to articulate that point. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to, I agree 100%. And I'm going to make it a little bit more real with an actual project, an actual client that I'm working with right now. And I'm not going to share the name of this organization, but it is a funeral home based in Southern Florida. And we've set them up in Salesforce. They were doing everything in an incredibly manual way up until about November, December of last year. So set them up in Salesforce. I now know a whole lot more about what it takes to run a funeral home than I did before. And essentially, and we've set up Conga Composer for them to generate the various documents that are needed to run a funeral home business. And just last week, I had a meeting with essentially my primary contact, who's very much into technology, and he's leading the digital transformation for this organization. And his superior, which is basically the founder of the funeral home, and as you can imagine, a very old school fellow who is used to using his fillable PDF forms, and he thinks that the same fillable PDF forms, which by the way look like they were created in 1970, he feels that he is very technologically advanced by using a fillable PDF form when he is speaking to, let's say, someone who calls to say, oh, my beloved just passed away, and here's all the information about the decedent, about the next of kin, about the place where they're located to pick up the body, etc., the funeral arrangements. And he's just happy-go-lucky putting it on the fillable PDF form. So I am basically meeting with him to convince him why he needs to finally let go of his PDF form and instead use the form that I created for the organization in their Salesforce in Conga Composer. You click a button and all of the same information is right on there. So the rest of the team is collecting information a lot of times in little bits and pieces, let alone, you know, it could be in one shot. They're collecting all of the details, they're creating the record, and boom, you click a button and it's generated, and they can send it out to whoever they need to send it out to. And his big hang up was as follows: it doesn't look like my PDF. He didn't even care about the quality of the content, the efficiency involved. His hangup was that it does not look like my PDF. He says every other funeral home that I send my PDF to, they compliment my PDF. They love the way that it looks. It's so efficient. I'm like, okay, solved, not a problem. I spent the last couple of days recreating in Microsoft Word to make it look like his PDF. So I am eagerly looking forward to meeting with him tomorrow to show him how now what looks a lot more like his PDF is baked into their Salesforce through Conga Composer, where those efficiencies. So for him, bringing it back to your point, which is number 2 over here, how do you evaluate, implement, and resource your solution? The solution was already introduced, but the big value to the founder of the funeral home was simply the aesthetics of their document, of the output. Okay, that's easily solved. Once all of the technology is in place, it's easily solved.
That's awesome. And then the business problems on the back end, right?
The business problems were already solved before.
Yeah.
And that's where, honestly, from a change management perspective, this is where, again, I think another critical area where so many Salesforce professionals sort of skip out on or forget about, because it's not mentioned in a whole lot of places on Trailhead, and Salesforce as a company doesn't talk about it a whole lot. But it's one thing to know how to solve problems for the business. It's another thing to know how to use the technical aspects of the platform, but from a change management perspective, to help bring people along that journey of doing things in a slightly different, ideally much more improved, more efficient way, is often the biggest challenge, because that's where emotions get involved, egos get involved. I mean, here with this founder, in the end, it's about the ego. He feels that this is this PDF is his baby, and he wants it to look like his PDF. I mean, if he truly wants me to make it look like a document that was created in 1970, I will. I'm trying to hold back on going that far, but that it's the change management aspects that are also need to be addressed as it relates to solving how the problem gets solved, what problems get solved, and the communication style that gets used to manage those projects and to make it real.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing too, is, you know, when you get into like larger organizations, David, and different organizations, one of the things that is really critical is to be able to take all of the time and the investment and the work and the horsepower that's put behind things like messaging and brand, and making sure that the message that's being formulated by the executive teams, the marketing teams, all the teams that are putting a lot of horsepower behind the right messaging and content and templates and look and feel, and being able to translate that all the way through to a customer. And that's harder than people think. Like it's hard to get that message all the way through to a customer in the way that they want it to be presented. And, something like a Conga Composer helps to make that happen. So whether it be the PDF that he wants to represent his organization in the way he wants it to look, it could be a whole brand set. It could be not only just a brand set, you could also incorporate other aspects of the deal. So Aaron just asked a question, which is, currently it sounds like Aaron's organization uses Conga CPQ and CLM. So what would you do with something like Composer, right? How would you expand a use case and be able to present the content the way it needs to be? Well, a lot of times, depending on what you're selling and what you're doing, you may want to incorporate into any particular quote, maybe a particular quote document, but you also want to bring in other types of diagrams, brochures that are custom branded. We may want to pull information out of Salesforce, maybe pull some data from external systems using APIs and bring all of the data into a singular set. Maybe the quote is also incorporated with a statement of work and some specific diagrams in the configuration or some other specific data that you want to bring in. Like you can help to package everything together in a singular unit versus just a quote. You can have a quote as well as the legal documents, as well as any kind of diagrams, brochures, any kinds of things that you want to present and to be able to show to an organization and to a company to present the right image, right?
I'll just add on to that by suggesting that depending on the business, depending on the use case that's involved, you could also have, so Conga Composer can be used also to create PowerPoint documents, as well as, like when I mentioned before the use case about the PDF of the founder and using a fillable PDF, like in that use case, it really does not make sense to have it as a fillable PDF. But in so many different industries that are highly regulated or need to rely on forms that are coming from different municipalities, different government entities. For example, I work with a lot of companies in financial services as well as healthcare. So let's say forms that are coming from New York State Department of Health, where we're not creating the forms. We can't possibly do it as a Microsoft Word document, but we have an existing PDF form, and we simply want to need to merge in information that's coming from Salesforce into those forms. So depending on your organization, along with the contract proposal that you're generating through CPQ, you can also create the corresponding, for example, release forms, consent forms, or other agreement forms that might be needed as well to make the deal move forward. You might have, for example, a passport application form. You're not creating that, you're simply filling in a form that's originating from a government entity, and Conga Composer can help you compile all of those documents into one bundle.
Love it. I love it. And whether you're presenting a solution to customers when you're talking about a business case, or you're helping your teams to do that, or if you're presenting a project or something internally and saying, hey, this is something that we want to represent, something we want to do, right? Any kind of business case justification. I love this graphic and this image, right? Which is, here's information. This is what we're going to do, right? And it's just raw, like we're going to change this and change that and change this and change that. And there's different ways of presenting that. You can just say, here, this is what we want to do. Here's all the components, the pricing, the element, here's all the information you need. And then sorting it makes it useful. Okay, so now I can see the different kind of categories, arranging it so I can see it in a particular pattern, present it visually nice. Okay, that looks pretty good. Those are good things. But when we're able to tie that back to a specific story, right? Which is this is the problem. This is how we're going to solve the problem. This is what it's going to take to solve that problem and all the investment that is required. And then this is going to be the impact, and this is how we're going to track that impact long term. And it's actionable. That's where you make the biggest impact. Not just like in solving problems in a business, but for you yourself in your own career. When you can go to an organization or you can go to an executive and say, here's the data, here's it sorted, here's it arranged, presented and explained with a specific story. This is what we're trying to solve for. This is how we're proposing to solve it. This is what it's going to take to solve it. And here's the business impact and the metrics that we're going to measure to determine that it's successful and it becomes actionable. And you can demonstrate that. That helps you to not only solve problems, but to build your personal brand. When you want to grow in your career, you want to develop, you want to progress, there's really 3 aspects to it, right? One is competency. And when you're getting badges and you're learning how to manage things and you're solving bigger problems and you're gaining experience, you have competency. And when you can tie that together with your personal brand by aligning yourself with your executives and the people that you're serving and helping, and you can communicate to them in the way they want to be communicated to, and you can generate that PDF just the way he wants it to look, okay? And you're solving big problems and you can meet them at their level and solve those and help to align to what they care about. And then you can go back and you can show the results of what you've done and you highlight that. That builds your personal brand. And then at the end of the day, at that point, you've got competency, you've demonstrated it, your personal brand is amazing, you're a David Giller, and then all you have to do is from that point is about timing. Keep solving those problems, keep working on it, and then when an opportunity opens up, you'll be there. You'll be the person where somebody says, I've got someone that can solve that. And that's where you want to be.
Agree. Not only do I agree 100%, I want to give an example of how I implemented this while I was at GE, and I was completely brand new to Salesforce without even learning any new Salesforce features whatsoever. So when I was at GE Capital, GE would send us to Dreamforce. Or like the New York World Tour. It was called something else back then. I don't even remember what it was called. It was way smaller than it is right now. But I made sure to, in addition to attending various sessions, I made sure to walk around in the expo area to check out the various booths. Now, I did not have authority nor budget to purchase anything on behalf of GE. But I went from a learning perspective. I did not go to collect the swag, but I do have to tell you that when you walk around those booths and your badge shows that you're an employee of GE, they pull out the really good swag that's behind the counter. Like they'll have like M&Ms on the counter, and at the booths, they'll be like, oh, you're from GE. Let me swipe your badge, and I have something really cool down here to give you. But anyway, that's a side note. But I went to all of the booths just in order to see what other solutions are there to problems I might not even be aware of, or my company is not even bringing me into those conversations to try and solve, just to broaden my perspective, my learning, my exposure to these different use cases on how Salesforce could be leveraged with these different apps. Usually there were companies that were on the App Exchange that were presented at the expo, just like they are today. And I would collect, at the time they were giving out a lot of pamphlets and stuff like that. So I would collect whatever information they had. Things were not as digital as they are today. And I would bring it back to my office. And then inevitably, about 6 months later, someone would pull me into a spontaneous meeting, pull me into someone's office or a conference room and say, hey, we got a question for you. We were just sitting here chatting about, let's say, the marketing stuff that we're doing. And we're wondering, is there any way that we could do like a marketing automation kind of thing in Salesforce? Like we haven't explored that yet. We want to send out, let's say, newsletters. And if they click on whatever, then it should automatically trigger a whole other series of things. And I'd be like, oh my God, yes, I'm so glad you asked. I would be like, hold on, I'll come right back. Go back to my office, grab the pamphlet. I'm like, here, this company, I saw a demo. It's really cool stuff. And even though I was not speaking with any real authority of hands-on experience with any of these different companies' product solutions that I was sharing, simply being the person who was able to connect the dots and to bring the organization one step forward, in one step closer to solving the problem, then that is what helped position me repeatedly. It helped position me as the person who was there to solve problems with the Salesforce platform or with technology that involved the Salesforce platform, even though I was making it abundantly clear, like I had no prior experience nor knowledge. I walked by the booth, I saw a demo, and here's all I know. That was the extent of it. So to the point that you made, Rusty, I think that everyone within their organization has many different nuances of the different problems, the different clunky areas, the processes that are going on within their organization, where they can identify opportunities to improve things, thereby positioning themselves again as the problem solver, as the person who, even if that solution that you're initially suggesting is not the right one, at least you were able to turn it into a meaningful conversation of something to explore and taking it to the next level.
Yeah, and I think that that's why I like the example you brought up about document automation, because it hits so many different aspects of a business. I mean, if you just think about just the pathway in like the revenue lifecycle. So you go from the configuration and generation of quotes, managing the pricing and the approvals, being able to then go into contracting, pull all your legal documentation out, and then document the relationship. And then then you have to think about what is the challenge of moving that data from what we've agreed to, from a legal and from a quoting perspective, to the rest of the business. So how do we process orders, and how do we invoice this? And how do we let the rest of the teams know that they have what we've agreed to? And then how do we look longer term, and how do we process renewals and addendums to agreements and create renewal agreements and all that whole process? I mean, there are 20 problems you can solve along that path. And then you go to the marketing organization and find out what their automation problems are, and the finance organization, what do we got to create for documents there, and the technical groups, and what do they have to, and even like, what do we have to document in terms of what we're going to deploy, and what is HR doing in terms of offer letters, and how do we get those signed and executed and approved? And those are so many problems that we can solve that impact so many different departments. It doesn't matter where you're working, right? Or where you're focused. It's a really nice way of just making everybody's life easier. Right?
And by the way, I would also suggest start with one very simplistic, rudimentary document. And then once you get that going, I would even suggest doing that in a sandbox. You start a free Conga Composer trial in a sandbox. Take a very simplistic, usually most companies have some form of an NDA, consent form, release form, something like that, that the Salesforce professional can get started with, and simply set that up and show people how it can be automated, how it can be streamlined, how one click, and it can be not only be generated, but turned into a PDF if you want on the fly, or give the output in Microsoft Word so it can be further customized by the sales rep. And once you get that going, then usually the ideas will start flowing from all of the other areas of the organization that have nothing to do with that rudimentary, simplistic document that you started playing around with. And you're going to be, for better or for worse, a little overwhelmed with all of the opportunities to simplify and streamline processes within the organization.
Definitely. And then just what's going to be, what can you do quickly? What can make a big impact? And how can you do it in a way that your executive you're working with likes, right? Do it in a way that makes sense to them. Make it easy, right?
And usually it's easier than most people think.
Absolutely.
Because when the
Hey, David, we lost your audio. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you.
Sorry.
And we heard like a little boing sound. It was awesome.
I don't know what did that. I must have accidentally pressed over here. Sorry.
All right. But I want to hear what you're saying. So let's rewind.
So basically, I don't know at which point you lost me. Sorry about that. So basically, what I was saying is for the Salesforce professional to start to identify the areas where Once the business leader realizes that the Salesforce professional is their ally, is looking out for them, is trying to solve the business problems, is trying to help the team work more efficiently, is trying to help them close deals faster, they are going to be very open to the various ideas, even if it's just a brainstorming idea that the Salesforce professional has of, hey, I see that the team is currently spending a lot of time on creating these documents in Word, and it's kind of ugly and clunky, and the fonts and the different versions of the document that are floating around, they will very quickly become open to hearing those ideas, even if they didn't necessarily come from the business leader, because they're not always looking to inflate their own ego to say, oh, I solved everything. They're often very happy to see that you, as the Salesforce professional, are looking out for them and their ally and trying to help them be better as a business leader through the solutions that you're introducing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, and if you can, want to be valuable to somebody, just find a way to serve them. Find a way to help solve some of their problems. Try to make their life a little bit easier. Help them find success and what's important to them. They'll notice.
Exactly.
They'll notice.
And on that note, I think we should also call out that Conga has an ebook that's available. We should get the slide up if we can. That there is a free ebook to help you as the Salesforce professional to start that conversation, to get going with the business leader who right now thinks that the manual, clunky, time-consuming ways of generating the documents is just the standard. That's how it should be. That's how it always is. So how to have that conversation to turn things around. This ebook will help you to start that conversation and get them moving in the right direction. And honestly, even if the business leaders within your organization say, I hear you, I understand, but we've got bigger fish to fry, they will still appreciate the fact that you are positioning yourself as a problem solver, trying to solve problems proactively on behalf of the organization, instead of the person sitting at their desk waiting for someone to ask for a new spreadsheet to be uploaded into Salesforce or a new custom page layout to be created.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Well, I think we got a couple more minutes. If anybody has any questions that they want to put into the chat, we're happy to answer anything. And Gina, I don't know if you want to take over.
There we go. For whatever reason, my mic wasn't turning on when I was clicking it, so I was panic clicking. We all know that feeling, right? Where you just start clicking rapidly, hoping that it works eventually.
That's how I navigate Salesforce.
Right? That's normally what happens when I'm in like PDFs or anything like that. So totally understand.
It's all good.
So we did have a question from Aaron. It says, my company currently utilizes Conga, CPQ, and CLM. What would a use case be to use Composer over CLM for proposal agreement generation?
Yeah, a lot of times that would be if you want to add a lot of different kinds of components or addendums to it. So if you want to add, for example, a package of different kinds of documents. So if you want to include technical diagrams, statements of work, if you want to input data and import data from different systems, Composer has APIs, so you can pull data from multiple systems. And also just the simplicity of it, right? Sometimes if you just want to make it a singular click of a button where you click, it generates the documents and all sends in a singular motion, things of that nature. Just depending on your situation, those would be ways of doing that as well. I don't know, David, if you got some thoughts as well.
No, I think you pretty much covered it. And honestly, I think that once as a Salesforce professional within any organization, once you start to position yourself as more of an operations professional and less of the person who simply goes behind the scenes to configure Salesforce, you will start to identify, just probing within your own organization, listening to what the team is doing, asking them, can you just show me how you use opportunities? How do you generate those invoices and contracts and proposals, whatever it is that you're doing? I ask that all the time of the team that I'm working with, and they very often will only keep the conversation stuck to Salesforce. And I purposely remind them, no. Show me your entire process. What are the things that you're using? But yes, I absolutely care. I want to see what you're doing in Salesforce. Because by the way, I'm also looking to see what sections on the page layout are irrelevant to them, are distracting for them. But I will also ask them questions of, show me what else is part of this process that I'm not aware of today. And that's where you will start to uncover things like, they'll say, oh yeah, and then I go into Outlook and I pull this, and then I go into Word and I pull that, and I cut and paste from here. And then, oh yeah, I go to our SharePoint and I download this PDF, because then I have to add the PDF into that attachment that I create as a zip file. That they're going to start telling you themselves how you can start to leverage Conga Composer in addition to all of the other things that you currently have in Salesforce. And not only that, you will start to identify what automation elements could potentially be introduced to streamline their processes just based on what they're showing you on what they do. And by the way, you still need to ask probing questions. Is this what you do every time? Is it only you who does this? So do your colleagues also do the exact same process, so that you know what you're getting into and how to configure it, whether it's individually for them or for a broader audience?
Yeah, that's great. And by the way, we facilitate those kind of conversations all the time at Conga with our customers and with different organizations that just want to talk about what is possible. Sometimes you have to know what was even possible, right? And it's great to have those conversations.
Exactly.
So
good stuff.
Amazing.
Well, thank you.
Gentlemen.
Yeah, appreciate the time, Gina.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all of our participants that joined us this afternoon. Thank you for taking time out of your busy days to sit with us and learn about how, we can manipulate Salesforce, if you will, leveling up. Special thanks to Conga, who this webinar is sponsored by, and very special thanks to Rusty and David taking time out of their busy schedules to enlighten us on amazing stuff. So to all of the participants, you will receive a recording of this in our recap email that comes from Rev Genius. So be on the lookout for that. And any questions, feel free to hit up Rusty and David on LinkedIn. I'm sure they won't mind. Myself as well. If you need a connection introduction, I'm always here for that. And we want to wish everybody a great afternoon. Don't work too hard.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
David.
everyone.
See you, Gina. Thank you.